Hello everybody. So today my ventriloquist dummy Emily and I are going to talk to you about the end of 1st Nephi and all the interesting things that happened in that. As a quick recap, it includes the breaking of Nephi's bow and the general food crisis that brought on, and it also includes the building of the ship and going to the promised land and the brothers' rebellion on the waters. And some other stuff as well. Some Isaiah is quoted, and I'm sure there are other things, but those are kind of the major highlights of Nephi's life that we were covering in last week's Institute lesson. Some major themes that stuck out to Rory and I from that lesson material were the concepts of broken things. As you can see, there's a big kind of mood board there, idea board of all the different things to do with broken things, and we spend a lot of time talking about that at Institute, and that actually was the biggest theme really. So we talked about, and the Liahona, the giving of the Liahona, but I'll come back to that. So broken things, we defined broken things in our lives. In Nephi's case it was the bow breaking. His brothers had already lost their springs, which meant they didn't work, they couldn't get any food, so it was a circumstance that they would not have chosen for themselves, and that's the basic definition, I think, of a broken thing. And some people's capacity to handle broken things is different to others. Some people live with much bigger broken things than other people. They might live in a war zone or be an orphan and such things, while the rest of us might live a more peaceful life in a country like in Australia. But nevertheless, everyone will have things in their lives that appear to be broken to them. And when things break in our lives, we have some choices to do with attitude and to do with turning to Christ. So when things break, we can become fixated with those broken things so that all we see is those broken things, and we can read everything in the light of them. And it's interesting that Laman and Lemuel are a good example of this, in that to them the whole leaving Jerusalem was a broken thing. And Laman says if we hadn't left, we would have had our gold, we would have had safety, we wouldn't have wandered around the wilderness eating raw meat, and he says, and we might have been happy. And so because of their fixation upon the lack in their lives, the things they didn't like, they were miserable. While Nephi seemed to view the same situation not as a broken thing at all, but more as challenges that with the Lord's help he would be able to overcome. And in our own lives we can choose different attitudes in the faces of challenges. And that doesn't mean that we will always be able to be super happy. During certain trials that might be rather strange, in fact, depending what the trial is. But we can choose our attitude and our response. Okay, so the other point that I really liked about broken things here, is it broken or is it an opportunity? I guess we've kind of covered that. But we can become so worried about broken things. Do you want to go and get her a lolly or something from the lolly cupboard? She's going to get you a lolly. We become so worried about broken things that we spend our time worrying that everything else is going to break too. And we live in this state of fear and quite shut down, quite worried. Everything is a potential threat. And we respond to people in that way as a threat or a resource drain. So I think it's important in our lives to try and separate the broken thing from the rest of our lives as much as we can. The other interesting point we had about the Liahona was it partly given to Lehi's family to help settle Laman and Lemuel down? Up until the giving of the Liahona, revelation was coming to the family mostly through Lehi, sometimes through Nephi. And the brothers were responding and saying, it's a hard thing that you, Lehi, are requiring of us. And so it was this real Lehi, Laman, Lemuel. And the introduction of the Liahona gives them an irrefutable voice of the Lord in their camp, and hopefully took some of the pressure off their family relationships. They may still not have liked what the Liahona said, but they couldn't now argue and say, well, it's not from God. You know, the Liahona was miraculous and they knew it. So they're great chapters and we really enjoyed them. I encourage you to have a look at them and see Ask yourself, how might the Lord be trying to guide you in your life? Is he speaking to you? Yes, yes. As clearly as he spoke through the Leahona. If you just look, is he speaking that clearly? Or does he trust you enough to use smaller promptings? It's interesting to ask ourselves those questions about revelation, and to try and watch our responses when things break or don't go according to our plans in our lives. And I say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.